We're excited to have you joining us today for the Google Life Virtual Summer Institute. Welcome to Google 101. My name is Linda Stewart, and I'm your session host. I'm here to support the session presenter, who I will shortly introduce, offer technical assistance to participants, as well as share the session evaluation and certificate at the end of the session. Please don't hesitate to use the chat to ask questions or request technical support. And at this time, I would like to introduce to you your session presenter, Aaron Wood.
Hey y'all, I'm excited to meet you guys. Well, virtually I should say. It'd be a lot more fun, I feel like, if we can do this in person, but I always find it interesting to see what places people use for all their Zoom calls. I kind of feel like everyone has that one little spot in their house where, like, this is where I do all my Zoom calls. So I'm excited to be with you guys virtually. I'm excited to kind of help out with whatever you guys have going on. And we got a lot of people on here. So far, we got 39 people on here. So I'm excited to see how I can help you guys. And please use that chat to send questions in as we go through. I am born and raised in Colorado, but I'm out here in Tennessee, so I tend to talk a little bit fast. So I'm going to try to slow down a little bit so that way you all can hear. And you guys will have full access to all of my slides, all of my presentations and stuff along those lines, so you guys can use those. And if I remember right, I believe that we're recording this session as well, so that way you guys can have that as a backup. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and switch over to my presentation for you. So you're going to see a little tiny face of me in the corner, and don't hate me if you don't see eye contact from me. I got a screen for the presentation, so I can just kind of work off things there. But right now, y'all should be able to see that same link to that pre-session questionnaire that I kind of threw out at the front. That's the first slide I put on there. It's not a hyperlink that you'd be able to click, but it is on there just for your reference and just for me, because I didn't know what kind of format or accessibility we've had, and I just like to have backups. So first and foremost, for accessing the materials, remember all of these materials are shared on the Virtual Summer Institute website. So underneath that June 9th folder, there should be a Google 101, and then you will also have that. But with Google, what's awesome is, if you notice at the top, and I'm going to send this through the chat as well, is for Google, everything has a hyperlink that can be shared. So let me see if I can get to the chat. So in the chat, what I would like to do is I'll send out a link to this Google presentation, but it's also listed right there. So it's that little bit.ly, and it's bit.ly, VSI, Google, and then so on and so forth. But as we go forward, that could be a way that I'll have it on the first couple slides, so that way you guys can get a copy of this, and it forces you to make a copy on your computer as well. A little bit about me. I'm currently serving as the assistant principal at Fairmont Elementary in Johnson City Schools. Before that, I was a high school biology and chemistry teacher. And then after that, I was a high school testing coordinator. So I was over the ACT, SAT, any other acronym you could think of. I was involved in that. So one of the things that I did personally for myself was I found ways to use technology, specifically Google, to go ahead and bring a high level of efficiency to what's going on in my job and trying to help other people out. So I get really excited when I can show you some things that really, really, really help you out in your lives. And at this point, with all this online and distance learning, I can't think of a better time, if you have not already dived into it, to just continue to dive into that, because with Google, it's really the accessibility of it that sold me on it. I saw a lot of different platforms of Canvas and Google Classroom and D2L and all these other things, but honestly, the accessibility of Google is what really sold me on that, and really just the updating of everything that was going on just tremendously sold me on that as we went forward. But let me see here. Oh, there we go. There's my chat. Google. All right, so in the chat, I've gone ahead and I've sent out a hyperlink that'll make you make a copy of this presentation if you couldn't find it in the session materials itself. And I'm going to teach you guys how to do that here in just a second. But what I kind of like to start off with is just an overview of what the apps are and the different ones that I'm really going to cover here today. Now, I know that there are some requests for Google Classroom specifics. I don't necessarily go into that as much. If we have some time at the end, I can kind of dive through that. But I like to use it, the different apps and the different things that you can use within Google Classroom, because I feel like that's just a platform for the Google Classroom of how to apply these different apps inside of that. So the first one that I'm going to look at with you guys is your Google Drive. This is the most chaotic and most confusing and most disorganized mess for a lot of people. But this is just an online database that I feel like is very undertapped with how our jobs are and the paperwork we have to use. I know I saw a lot of coaches, assistant principals, a lot of multi-year teachers, a lot of, I saw special ed, I saw art. So with that, all the paperwork that gets really, really backed up, using Google Drive really helps you use that. And then you also have the security aspect of it that does kind of back up all those special protected paperworks and whatnot. Then we're going to look at Google Docs. This is one you guys might be familiar with. I saw some used it. Of the 21 responses that I had on that pre-survey form, 14 of you guys said that you were currently using Google Docs, so that tells me that it's being used. So I'll look at some kind of tips and tricks you can use in there. The one that I saw that was really underwhelming with their response was Slides. That's really an untapped resource that I feel like can be a huge, huge help for you. And then Forms and Sheets, we'll look at those together because those two really do play really well together. But to start off with, what we're going to take a look at is just one general shortcut that'll help you learn a tremendous amount inside of Google and how to kind of be a Google keyboard ninja. In any Google app, whether it's Google Chrome, Google Docs, Slides, anything, if you hit Control / in that, it brings up a panel of shortcuts. So if I go ahead and I drag this over, and y'all can kind of see those two links there, if I hit Control / what that does is that brings up this of shortcuts. Now, these are very, very, very overwhelming, and a lot of them you guys will never, ever use, if we're just going to be completely honest with that. But what I've learned it to do is that I've learned it to show me some different things that these apps can do. So like resizing objects, when you look at editing, inserting links, switching to the different modes that I feel like a lot of us have issues with whenever a doc gets sent to us. Getting to the chat, or even if you look at menus, how to get to the different shortcuts. Now mine are going to look different because I'm on a Windows computer. If you have an Apple computer, you're going to have that little percentage Apple looking sign in front of it. I've never known how to describe that. I've come up with a lot of different words for Google things, but that's one I don't know. I call it the weird percentage thing. So if you hear that, don't hate me, but that's just my personal way of trying to figure it out. Now, as we go forward, I'm going to use some of those shortcuts to kind of do things on my screen, but you don't necessarily have to do that. It just kind of helps me present things. So if you're like me, this is kind of what your Google Drive looks like. And this is what I've always wanted to do. I'm a real big neat freak. I do not do disorganization well. This picture is a little bit outdated. If you notice, it says team drives on there. Those aren't a thing anymore. They've renamed those to shared drives. I've just gotten it under control. So this picture is pretty accurate of what it used to look like. Now, on there, if you notice, you have copy of, you have all these different things. But if I go ahead and I'm going to go and bring over a sample drive for you. So this is a folder that I created just for this presentation. So it's got sample things. It has a parent progress report that we're going to use at some point, and then some files in there that I can use. But if you notice over here, there's shared drives. Now, the far left shared drives, this can be like a Pandora's box if people get a hold of it because they want to create a shared drive for about anything. It has its advantages because with shared drives, you can add other people to them. So I know personally at Fairmont, what we have done is I've created a lesson plan database for our school, and I've added every single teacher onto that database. So on there, every single teacher can see every other teacher's lesson plans. They can see their curriculum materials. They can use that. So for you art teachers, for you special ed teachers, and I know I saw music on here as well. When you're trying to support those classroom teachers on some of the standards that they're going on, it's hard to know what they're working on in time because you don't have the time to walk down there, talk to them about it, come back, get it set up, do all that. So what we did is we created a database so that they could log on there and see. Now, every single teacher can change these files. Every single teacher can add to them, which is a scary kind of trust thing. But you can also set it up to where, so if I go to a shared drive and I look at, let's say we have our bus list, I can go ahead and if you go into shared drive settings, you can choose who can share it. You can choose what they can do, and you can choose if they can take anything off of there. So one of the big differences we've used with this is for our instructional packets that we gave out during the coronavirus closure, we put them on there and gave parents a link to these so that they can access those, but they don't have any ability to edit any of the files in there. Because we all know that we have that one person that'll go in and delete that one file you need at the exactly wrong time, or they'll go in there and they'll move that one thing out and you're like, where'd this go? So I have trust issues with my drive. I'm not gonna hide it. I set all my protections up so people can't edit anything unless I say that they can. But a lot of times for your team, I know that there's always been those times that for your lesson plans that you wish you could work on all those together and all those different things. But I mean, we're looking at potential summer school. So we've got all of our rosters on here. We've got all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, we're looking at how we can have multiple people working on the same files, and Drive is really the place to do that. Now, on here, this file, this parent progress file, is a Microsoft Word document. So I know that I have a lot of teachers who really have awesome resources in that Office suite. So you have your PowerPoints, your Microsoft Word, you have your Excel spreadsheets. And honestly, don't want to make them over again. I want to just have those same ones and be able to use those when I need them. So instead of having this, what we can do is if you just right click on it, you can do open with, and Google Docs is an option, and it automatically converts any file you have that's Microsoft Office into for Google. So if you have a PowerPoint that you can go ahead and transfer over, you just right click, open with slides, done. You've got it. And if you're talking about incorporating into Google Classroom, go ahead and save that. You can save that in there, and then that way you can make them play better with each other like that. Now, one thing to know is that I know when I went from high school to elementary, one thing I was not ready for was the cutesy fonts. I know at the high school it was Times New Roman 12. That's what it was all the time. Now, if you're transferring over one of those fonts of the clip arts and that kind of stuff, I can't say it's going to look the same, but it can look similar. They'll try to do their best to match it for you. So if I open up that Word doc in Google Docs, what's going to happen is it's going to link all the images. It's going to have all of the same fonts. It's going to try to do the formatting as close as possible to what that original file was for you. So if you have a bunch of worksheets or you have a bunch of templates, if you have a bunch of any stuff like that that you're trying to get onto Google Classroom, or you're just trying to share it with somebody instead of having to print off a copy for them and give them a copy and put in their box, you can just have a Drive folder and have that and share that over to them. But one other thing is a shared drive is not always the best option for what you want to do. Because within a shared drive, you're creating a whole different database. Sometimes all that you want to do is share a folder. So if I go ahead and I create just a sample folder, if you right click that and you click share, what's going to pop up is the current privacy access for that folder that you have. So right now, since I just created it, I'm the owner of the folder, and right now it's restricted to only people added can open with this link. So I have to add in each individual person that I would want. So let's say that you're on a team and you have 3 history teachers with you. you can add them all on the same folder and share resources. Or let's say that you're a special ed teacher and you have multiple case files and you're looking for progress reports for certain people. You can share that on there so that way you can have it. But in order to do that, you need to go ahead and click this change link. Now this may look different for you because each school system has an administrator access that can change what this looks like or what your options are. So ours in Johnson City Schools are defaulted to always be anyone at Johnson City Schools with the link, with the link can view. So if I click on that, there are 3 different options. You have restricted, Johnson City Schools, or anyone with the link. Now, if I would have set my presentation up to restricted and then sent that link out, none of you guys would have been able to access that presentation. Because any of the hyperlink, it would have been blocked. It would have been restricted. If I would have left it as Johnson City Schools, anyone who didn't log on with an email address of @jcschools.org would not be able to access that. So for our materials, I set them up as anyone with the link. Now, if you notice, it defaults to viewer. There's 2 different options. You can have viewer and you can have editor. So a viewer can just see what's inside of the folder. They can open up the files inside of the folder. They can't add them. They can't delete them. They can't edit anything that's on them. So if you have parents that you want to give resources out to, and you want them to be able to see, okay, here's our calendar, here's an updated, a newsletter, any stuff like that, a viewer is the best thing for them to be because they won't edit anything that's going to be going on. Now, for most of my files, I'll change them to editor because if I'm adding somebody to it, I'm adding them to it for a reason. So if I go ahead and click editor and then click done, that means that anyone who gets the link to that will have the ability to edit that stuff. Now, these files that I've highlighted, that's not the case for those. So those all have their own separate sharing permissions that you would have to go in and change. But one little quick trick with Google is that if you take all these files and drag them into one folder that has that, it pops up this. Because anything inside of the folder has the same sharing preferences as the original folder. So if anyone can edit anything in the folder, if you put anything in there, anyone who has access to that can edit anything that's in there, each of the individual documents. So sometimes this gets a little tricky when you're sharing stuff out, but the biggest thing is it makes it less of a hindrance for other people to access your files in those regards. So if I look back here, instead of having all of these as individual files out, I can go ahead and drag them into folders exactly like you would your File Explorer. Now, the one thing for mine that always drives me nuts is this shared with me. So this shared with me will never, ever, 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 ever be organized. I can just give you guys a heads up on that right now. People will keep on sharing stuff to you. But the one thing that people don't realize that they can do is if, let's say that I want to make sure that I have a copy of these VSI materials for 2020, because I think there's a lot of good stuff that's going on during these. I want to make sure I can access those. You can drag and drop anything over from the shared with me part onto your drive. So you can add a link to that anywhere you want. So now, inside of my drive, I have that link to that VSI 2020 materials. I don't have to go looking inside of my shared with me anymore. I don't have to worry about any of that. The only time that this would change is if the owner of the file changes those sharing preferences. So if they take that away, then it won't be on your drive anymore. But that lets me find those things that I need to see. But let's be honest, a lot of times I have no idea where I'm saving stuff because it's a Google Drive and it gets crazy. This top search thing, you can search for whatever you want. So let's say I want to get back to those sample presentation materials. I search for that. There we go. And we're back into where we were. So that searches through not only the file name, but within the file itself. So I know for our RTI programs, we have those progress monitoring reports, and we also have the check-ins to see how our tutors are doing. you can search for a student's name, and if it's anywhere on a document, you can find it. So you're like, man, I don't know what the name of that file was. I don't know where it is, but I do know that it was about that book, Bold School. You can look and it'll find all of the different files that have that, whether it's inside of it or whether it's on the actual file name itself. So that's a quick way to kind of search for those things within your actual drive itself. Now, I know I'm going fast. I hope I'm not going too fast. If I am, just tell me in the chat that I'm going too fast and I'll slow down a little bit. My goal is you guys have a recording of this, so if you need to, you can go back and click and play and pause, whatever you need to. But like I said, I'm from Colorado. I talk really, really fast, so please forgive me if that becomes too fast. I'm also used to a high school block schedule, so you all know on those, every second is critical, especially when you got those end of course tests whenever they work online at the end of the year. Now, some of the biggest ways to clean that stuff up, I gave you all the shortcuts that I use the most amount of time. So I found this GIF online. It always cracks me up. It reminds me as a kid with my room growing up, it was never clean. So if I could ever figure out how to do this instead, that would have helped me out tremendously. But this just lets you have quick ways to make sure that you can rename things, you can share things, you can preview them before you open them, you can move them, all that kind of stuff. So that way you can go ahead. The best part about this is that you can undo anything that you do. I cannot tell you how many times I have deleted a file and been like, man, I really shouldn't have done that. I need that back, and it's gone. If you delete anything on accident, you just hit Control-Z on any Google app, and it's back. So for example, like let's say that I have these hyperlinks again that we had on here before. And I go ahead and I just go ahead and I'm just like, oh, I think I'm typing over this. It's going to be great. I'm adding it on there and I accidentally delete it. If I go ahead and hit Control-Z, any changes that I make are going to be reversed back, and that's not going to be deleted anymore. It adds it right back to how it was. It's back. That includes deleting files, moving files, any stuff like that. If you make a mistake that you want to take back, just hit that Control-Z. And that changes that right back to where it was before for you. This is the step-by-step for how to convert those Office files you have for you. So Google's gotten a lot better. They let you open them up now, but if you want to fully convert them, you can just click that right-click Open With, and then you can select whatever app you want to open it with. It always is going to suggest the one that's corollary. So if you have a Microsoft Word file, it's going to suggest that you convert that to Google Docs. If you have a PowerPoint, it's going to tell you to convert that to slides. So it does a really, really good job with selecting which one it wants you to. The one thing that it doesn't do without a workaround, which there's ways to go about it, is converting a PDF. So converting a PDF to a doc is slightly possible. It just usually takes an add-on that by your district to do. One of the biggest things that I would suggest you do, especially if you're in a high school or middle school environment where students are one-to-one with Chromebooks, is making sure that you have one setting set up to be set up for your kids and for yourself as well, because we all know those times that you're working on something and then all of a sudden the internet goes down. And for Chromebooks, that usually means that you have a semi-expensive paperweight now. Because if you don't have internet with a Chromebook, we all know that it gets shut down really quick. So on my drive, what I'm going to show you is right up in here is this gear. So this gear is always going to be your settings in all Google apps. If you have an iPhone, it's the same look. If you have any of that, so it's that same gear. So if I go ahead and click that gear and go into settings, what you're going to notice is right here in the middle, there's this option for offline. I would highly, highly, highly recommend that you click that on if the people have their own specific devices. So if the students have one-to-one on Chromebooks, what this will allow them to do is, let's say at the end of the school day, they're still working on that paper. They didn't have the chance to get it done, but you want to be able to work on it at home. But we all know the reality for a lot of our students is they don't have internet at home. They don't have the ability to access those same files. If you click this offline, if they've opened it up on their drive and this is clicked, they can access it whenever they want, regardless of Wi-Fi. What it'll do is as soon as they come back and they reconnect with that Wi-Fi, it'll upload the newest copy that you've edited. So if you're in the middle of class and you're working on that slides and you're doing great and everything's going good, and then boom, Wi-Fi goes down, which we all know has happened because technology is great until it doesn't work. Students can keep on editing. Students can keep on working on that. The only thing is they have to have opened it before the end of the school day. So if you put something on there that you want them to have at home, make sure that they have opened it up, because that puts a copy on their drive. If they don't have internet at home, they won't be able to access anything new is the biggest way to do that. But that setting right there, if your district allows it, I highly recommend setting that. Now notice it says not recommended on public or shared computers, because if you do that, you're downloading your stuff on a computer that anybody can access, which wouldn't necessarily be the right way to go. And then you can get some different issues on that. So I know that in the elementary world, one of the things that I've seen a lot of are weekly newsletters. So in the high school, we always put that information on the student. But for the kids and for the parents, we have a lot of weekly newsletters, weekly updates, all those kinds of things. And it is always such a pain when you send one of those out that you have to wait and send out a whole different one. And if it's online, you have to change the web address and all that kind of stuff. What Google allows you to do is so let me go and find a PDF really quick that I can work this on. Let's say that you just have, so let's say that I have, oh, there we go. That's one I can go to. I forgot that was an option. So if I go to this VSI 2020 materials, and I go to today's session, so it's June 9th, and we're in Google 101. If I look at this, nice one, go Google 101. Now let's say that 5 minutes before this, I made a change and Mr. Payne wasn't able to upload that newest one, and I didn't want to mess with anything. I didn't want to have to add a new one and delete it. If I right click on that, if you notice down here, it says manage versions. If I click on that manage versions, you'll notice that it happened before. So on June 1st, Mr. Payne uploaded a copy of this PDF. On Monday, I changed some stuff, so I had to upload a new copy. Instead of making a new file with a new link and all that kind of stuff, you can upload that. Now, we all know that we have the people that mess up our files and we want to go back to how they were before. This snowman, don't ever be afraid of clicking the snowman. It's just like the Olaf guy from Frozen. He's one of your best friends, I promise. You click on that, you can download the old version before the changes. So let's say you've got a kid who typed up their whole research paper, something happened and got deleted. You go into versions, boom, you got it back and it's ready to go. You can keep forever. What this could be good for is, let's say that you just have a link on your Google Classroom, on your website, somewhere on your site for your school, and you just want to upload a new file on there, but you don't want to change the link that's happened before. You can just upload the latest week, so you can say, click here for your weekly newsletter, and then never have to change that. You don't have to send it back out again. You don't have to do all that. It also gives you a database of all the different ones you've uploaded. So like, I think I said that back in October. Let me go and check. So you can go back and look and see what all the different newsletters you've had before are. So let you see the changes that are made. Now, if you notice, depending on your file size and your drive, they can delete them after 30 days or after 100 versions are stored. But let's be honest, if you're uploading 100 versions of something, I'm not sure if it's necessarily something you want to keep for the eternity, because that means there's been a lot of mistakes and changes on it. So if I go ahead, I'm going to close that and go on back to the presentation. One of the things that is the biggest dark horse that it's come to when it comes to Google Apps and Documents, let me get the right one over here, is up top here. Now, I would try to zoom in on my screen, but I don't know if it'll necessarily work for you, and I don't have that fancy Apple button. You can click on it and it zooms in on you for you. But inside of this, every single one of these documents, files, folders, slides, everything has a website. So that's the best part of Google is every single document, every single thing has that website. And it is very, very, very complicated. And you want to leave all of this alone until you see this word edit. Now, I love you all. I love working with you, but I do not want you to be able to change my slides presentation because I know what will happen. I'll start presenting and next thing you know, the slide that I want, it's gone. There's notes all over it. Excuse me, so on and so forth. So let's say that I didn't want you to edit it, and this is what I did for you. I just changed that one edit word to copy. And this is the link that I sent you. So if I go to that web address or that hyperlink, now it's asking me if I want to make a copy of that document. So you get all access to everything that's inside of that PowerPoint. Sorry, that Google Slides. It's really hard to switch back terms for me. But in that slides, but you cannot edit my original. The only downside to this is whenever your students or your faculty or your staff or your principal, whoever it is, makes a copy, if you change anything, it's not automatically updated on that copied one. So like, let's say that there is a typo and you know you really want to send out that corrected one. If they've already made a copy of it, they're going to have to make another copy. That's the only downside for that one aspect of things. Now, there's a lot of different options that you can put on this. So if I go back to the original one, let's say that it's not something you need to copy, it's not something you need to edit. Let's say that I just want you to look at it. I can make you go to a preview that you're not able to change anything on. So you can preview the whole document. You can see everything that's on there. So for, let's say that you have, you know, a reference that you want them to look at, or let's say that you have a text that you want everyone to read, or let's say that you have, you know, I know for history and for a lot of high school subjects, you have that reference material that it's like, okay, I just need you guys to read this. You don't want to send them a Google Doc that they can edit and change and all that kind of stuff. You just want them to be able to see it. So you can do preview so they can look at it. Or my preferred option whenever you get to that one is present. But I can't do that one with the slide, with the docs, but I can do it with slides. So if I bring up a slide, so this is just going to be a blank one that we're going to look at in just a little bit. And I change that edit to present. What it's going to do is it's going to bring up on your screen what it will look like if you're presenting this on them. So if you're inputting slides into your Google Classroom and you just want them to be able to see it and click through it and not edit it or make a copy, you can change that into present. Now, notice all I did was this entire long hyperlink, I didn't touch a single thing about it because this is your document code. All I did was I just changed the verb at the end. So I just changed that to edit, copy, present, preview, all of those different things so that when you send out that link to your students or to your faculty or to your coworkers or to your administration, that you can make sure that they interact with it the way that they want. Now, if you do that, the biggest thing is make sure that you're sharing is can actually access it. So if I click on that share button, right now, this one single presentation is set up to be only me. So only I can see that. So if I sent you the link, it would say, you don't have access. Please click here to request access. And I've done this before, and I got 80 emails from kids within an hour, and it was rough because I didn't set up the preferences right. So make sure that when you do that, when you share that, that it's go ahead and set up. So I'll do test here. And then so that share, right now, only I can do that. So for you guys to access the presentation that I have up there and for the materials, I set that up again as anyone with the link can view. Now, I did change that to copy so you weren't able to edit my presentation. That was the only thing that I changed so you guys couldn't edit that. There's also another option, which if you're in administration could work really well if you're looking at discipline referrals, you're looking at stuff that you want to edit, but whenever you download it that you don't want anybody else to edit, you can go ahead and have them export that file as a PDF. So instead of the words edit, you can go ahead and do this export (format equals PDF), and then whatever document you have, they download that as a PDF. So you can keep on working on it and editing and adding in your case notes and all that kind of stuff. But whenever they click on that link, they can't. So for your newsletters, for your worksheets, for stuff like that you don't want them to edit, you just want to have as records, you can do that on them as well. So that way you can make sure that on those, they don't edit anything that you have. Now, most learning management systems, so I have experience with D2L, with Canvas, with Google Classroom, they will always let you do a hyperlink. So they'll always let you link to something because they know that they have to incorporate other things. That's your way in because hyperlinks are outside content. Now, every single part of anything in Google has its own link. This is all that you need to link to. So there's a lot of different things you can do. So you can link to this and different things. And when we look at docs here in a second, I'll show you about hyperdocs and how you can link to those types of things. But anywhere you can put a link in, you can access any part of Google, forms, sheets, slides, anything in any learning management system. Now, a lot of them do play easier. So I know that Google and Google Classroom obviously play the best together. I mean, that they work well together because they're made by the same people. Canvas works really well with it because I have the plugin. D2L is a little bit rougher. They have that you can link to outside content, and that's where those ones really come in because D2L really wants you to play inside of their little forum, and if you like to go outside of it, it's not necessarily the best way. So if you think about the big three are docs, sheets, and slides. Those are the big three, and forms, if you're going to do questions, are really good. But if you look at different things you can think of, research papers, book reports, probability experiments, group presentations, group projects, and KWL charts, I'm going to challenge some of your thinking of which one you think would be best. Because for Google Docs, the only one of these that I would use for Google Docs is a research paper. I would use slides for the book reports. I would use slides for the presentations, the group projects, the KWL charts. I would use slides for all of that because I'm going to show you why it works a little bit better. Now, sheets, if you're going to do formulas, probability experiments, you know that's your way to go. It has the same formula capability as Excel. Some of them are a little wonkier with the verbiage of them, but a quick Google search can tell you that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and we're going to look at voice typing, translation, citations and research, and the Explore button in Google Docs so you guys can be a little bit more familiar with these different high-powered tools that you can use. So one of the things that's in here, so this is just a blank Google Doc that I've created for this presentation. So on there, what we have are all these different things on top. If you look at tools, one of the best things to help you guys with is this voice typing. So it's Control-Shift-S. Now, I have a lot of times where I call a parent and I'm not necessarily the best at picking up everything they're doing. I'm writing as fast as I possibly can, or I'm having a meeting with the student. And what I can do is if you just click this button, you can go ahead and it will record everything that you're saying as long as you're close enough to the microphone. So it doesn't do grammar, it does the apostrophes, it doesn't do commas, doesn't do periods, doesn't do any stuff like that. But it does give you a transcript. Now imagine if you had a student read a book to the computer, if they're in a small group and you're not there, and they're have it translating for them and writing down what they're saying, and then they have to read back and be like, was that the same thing that the book said? Are you seeing the same thing that the book's saying, or are you seeing something a little bit different? You can use that as a diagnostic. Now, one of the other good things is, I'm going to stop this because it makes me really self-conscious about how much I talk in a very short amount of time, is if you notice up here in the corner, it won't make me, but if you look up there, it has English US. Now, I know I've had some parents that I necessarily am not able to communicate with very strongly because of the language barrier that's created. If the language exists in Google Translate, it exists within a doc. So if I go down, I know that for a lot of mine, and it has different ones, let's say that we do Spanish because we have a Spanish speaking parent that I'm trying to communicate with, and I'm trying to just really communicate that, the after school program today is canceled. What you can do, or you're having a class meeting with them and they're not really picking up what you're saying. If you change the language and hit that button, it'll start to record what you're saying, and it'll also translate that for you into there. I'm just not close enough to the microphone, so I don't think it's going to pick me up on this one right now. But let's say that they're sitting here saying, I'm going to pick up my student today at 3 p.m. or paso por ti a las 3 en la mañana. I'll pick up the student at 3. It'll start to translate your speaking. It's having a hard time with me now because I think I talk too fast. But you can go ahead and have them, and you can have the parents speak into your computer in Spanish. And then, let's just say that I need them to understand this. I can translate this into, let's say, Spanish, translate it. And then now what they have is they have a very, very rough translation of what you said in your original document. So you can do meetings like this. You can record things like this. If you have an email that you want to send out to parents that you're not sure how to translate, you can put it in there. Now, this will not get the context the greatest. I think we've all kind of experienced that with Google Translate in the past, but it gets the point across a lot better than me saying the same 4 words of Spanish that I know each time and using my hand motions to try to get that point across. Where this could be a real game changer is any of your documents that you have. So I know, like for this one, this was an RTI report that we sent out to parents once a month, letting them know how their students were doing, different progress, stuff like that. I don't know how to translate this into Spanish. I'm not good at that. I know we have people in our district that can do that. But let's say that you just wanted to go and do this. You can do that same tools, translate document, and choose a language. And then what's going to pop up is a copy of a document of your original one that is fully translated through Google Translator. Now, it won't get all the words right, won't get all the context right, but we've all had those students come in that have a very significant language barrier. And you know that they're not performing to their level possible simply because they can't access the material. So if you have a worksheet or you have a packet, you have a presentation, anything, you can translate those into any language that's in Google Translate. I know Spanish is always the go-to one, but I know one year we had a student who transferred in, and let's see if they have this language in here. They spoke Afrikaans, I believe was the name of it. So if I go to translate, there we go, Afrikaans, and I translate this. Our ESL teachers may not be versed in every single language that they experience within the actual school day. So in there, what it does is it translates it into any language, any document that you can do. So if you're having trouble accessing your parents, if you're having trouble accessing, some of your students, if you just want to kind of scaffold them, you can give them both. And the best thing is you still have your original one. So this is the one the district gave us. This is the translated one. And if I go into my Google Drive, let's see. Yeah, so if I go to my Google Drive and I have my sample presentation materials, and that's where this was, all these files are on my drive as the translated copy of. So you can rename those. So let's say that this one is my Afrikaans one. Oops, hit the wrong one. So if I go ahead and I click on that, I can open that up, and that's right back to that Afrikaans one. You can rename it. You can do whatever you want. You can share it with people. You can download it. So really, really, really helpful in anything that they're doing. Now, before I mention that, one of the biggest things that I would use is, let's see, if I just go ahead and I do docs.new, because I don't know where my other one went, so I'll just make another blank one. So on here, let's say that we all have those students who don't really like to cite their resources and you have to doc them on their research papers and stuff like that. You can have this. So let's say that I'm researching coronavirus and the impact on the economy. And I don't necessarily trust my students a lot to go over and open up a new tab and research whatever they want. If you notice the bottom right corner, there's this Explorer button. It looks like a window that has curtains on all four corners. I don't know how else to describe it, but a window with all four corners. On there, you click that Explorer button. You have now opened up a Google search inside of your actual document. So let's say that they're doing, so I'm going to do coronavirus. If I can type, and economy. So I search for that, and here we go. There's this BBC article. Now, I know that my English teachers growing up were super, super finicky about which style of citations I was supposed to use for my paper, and I got docked. I can't tell you how many points doing that. Up here, that snowman, you can choose citations for MLA, APA, and Chicago. So as long as they know which one they're supposed to do, you can do it on there. So let's say I want APA. And they clicked on this and they got some stuff from it. Let's say that they cited this. This was their quote. If you click that little quotation, on the bottom here, you have a working bibliography with footnotes, a hyperlink to the document, and a correct citation in APA. So you have all that stuff in there. What I'd like to show you with this is if we go to slides now, and I bring over my blank presentation, whoops. I've got way too many things open. There we go. All right, so I bring up this presentation and I do that explore. Let's say that we're doing a research project on penguins is what they're supposed to be looking for. So you can look at penguins. So what this does is you can look on the web for Google searches. You can pull images that already have the copyright approved to use for anything. Or you can look through your drive. So if you notice, we've had some teachers who have done some lessons about penguins. So that's why they're popping up here. So on this, you can go ahead and just add in this picture. And there you go. You got that working, and your students never had to leave the same screen. So they never had to open up that same tab that they can hide or the same different thing that they can go through. And if I scroll down a little bit, or if I scoot this up, it attaches the hyperlink of where they got that file from. So you can see that. So you can see that it's actually one that they used. So if I go back to my Explorer and I go ahead and I close out of that Penguins one, now what it'll do is it'll suggest layouts to use based off what different things I've already put in my presentation. So we all know that kids love to personalize stuff, so they can personalize all this. But I'm gonna go ahead and delete this off there for now. One of the biggest keys, so I'm trying to talk faster, I'm realizing I'm running out of time a little bit. One of the keys over here, if you go to page setup, now I know we all have had kids create a book at some point or another. Every teacher's had that one lesson like, okay, we're gonna make a book out of this. This will be your research book or your reading book. On page setup, you can do a custom setup. Standard paper is 8.5 by 11. I click apply, and now you have a full-size book. You have students that you want to do an 11 by 17, you can do it on there. You have students who like this. I know that there's some high schools out there, elementary schools, that this is how they do their yearbooks. They do a Google Slides. Everyone gets their own slide that they can decorate. You print out the whole thing, and there you go. You got a yearbook. But the reason why I like slides so much more than docs for any presentation or document is if I go ahead and I just the normal one that you'd see, you can add in text boxes. You can edit the words that are in there. You can go ahead and, like I said, you can search for images. So let's go back to the penguins again. I don't know why I'm stuck on that one, but we'll go with it. So I'll add in a penguin in there. You can resize these. You can layer them. You can move them all around. You could insert a video from YouTube if they want to use that. So I know that I'm giving a presentation here in a couple weeks, and I know one of the things that I'm using is the Key and Peele Teacher Center video, because I find it hilarious that they treated teachers like pro athletes in this video. So let's say I go ahead and select that. I can put a video into here. So that's in there. You can insert audio. So if you record yourself, you can insert the audio in there. Or my favorite is if you, on the bottom, there's speaker notes. So I'm not one of those people that uses speaker notes a lot. I know a lot of people use speaker notes for a lot of things. That's never really been my thing. But what I did figure out that you could do is if you go Tools, Voice Type Speaker Notes, you can record your notes in here. Let's say that students are talking about penguins are an endangered species in South America. They are liking cold stuff. They have eggs. They dance around in circles. They sing weird songs on movies. You can have that. But then the best thing is they can copy and paste their speaker notes into the presentation. So we have those kids who can't type that well. We have kids who are in Spanish who don't know the English keyboard that well. I've had students from Southeast Asia that our keyboard is not the right option for. What they can do is they can talk in, and then they can paste their information into the slides. Now, you cannot do all of this with Google Docs. That's the reason that I find Google Slides to be much more powerful in the things that you can do, especially if you think about group projects. So if I share this, let's say I just shared it with a different coworker, anyone with a link can edit that. If you notice up here, it says all changes saved in Drive. If you click that, it tells you exactly who made every single change. I was the kid in groups who did all of the work. I know it, and it was fine. But I told my teachers, and they didn't believe me. Now you can go through and you can see exactly who made any edits to any slide at any time. We also have those jokesters in our class that, let's say, decide that they are going to delete someone else's slide because they like theirs better. Now, I'm not saying this happens all the time, but we all know it does happen. If you, as the teacher, go back in there, you can go back and restore any version that was there before. So you can do that. You can see, what was your first draft like? Did you actually make any changes between your first draft and your second draft before you turned it into me? Did you make any changes to the third draft before you turned it into me? So on and so forth. So you can see all of those different things within there. Google Forms and Sheets work extremely well together. So my example for this one is going to be the questionnaire that I had you all fill out. So I apologize at first. I had a blank question in there. It said option 1, and the only option was option 1. So I went ahead and deleted that one off. But of the 21 responses, you're seeing live results of what we have. So we have literacy coaches, assistant principals, so on and so forth, all the way through. Then you have how familiar you are. It changes the data you receive based off of the individual question that you have. How familiar are you? What are you using? What's your goals? What's one thing you hope? Now, this is an overlay. If I just want to look at each individual question, I can see how many selected multiple ones. So we have some that are 6th through 8th and 9th through 12th. We have some that are K through 8. We have some through all that. So even those aren't options, you can look at a question by question. So out of analysis, after a quiz, you can see what different things people put in. Or you can look at what an individual one is. So the individual who's a literacy coach, this is what their entire one looked like. So if you have kids who are taking quizzes, any stuff like that, you can look individual level, you can look question level, or you can look summary level. Is that there's this little green square. This little green square downloads all of the responses into a spreadsheet. So for me, I use spreadsheets about every day of my life. The slogan I usually go through is the answer is always a spreadsheet. So I'm the guy who on vacations, you got the itinerary and it's spreadsheeted out for times. I've got budgets on here. My wife can't stand it sometimes, but it works for me. So on there, if you notice, we have all of the different ones. Now, these are just the individual questions that were given on that form. So you can go through and I can sort it by, okay, let's sort this to see what the different ones are so I can kind of see the different groups of that. Or let's see, how many of them, let's sort these and let's sort them. You can put them into groups based off what they answer. Now, what's nice is if anybody goes back and answers this, it automatically gets added onto this sheet. So this isn't just like a one-time thing. It's not stagnant. It's not anything like that. It goes through, and you can use that as it consistently goes. Now, if you notice, I did not collect email addresses because I didn't need that for this presentation. A lot of that is for follow-up that I do for local teachers in our district. I can go and do that and send out the presentation if they weren't able to. The fact that it's already online saves me from having to do that step. And then this is what a blank form naturally looks like. So you have questions, responses, all of that. So if there's any information you want to get from your teachers or from your students, if you just put name in there, you're going to get 4,000 different styles of answers. I mean, I've seen for just myself, I've seen people put in names of Dr. Wood, Aaron Wood, Woods, all different types of things. The biggest piece of advice is always suggest to them what you want their exact answer to look like. So name, first and last, done. Let's say that I want to add a question of what grade level do you teach? Google intuitively chooses the question style. So we have 6th. Let's go ahead and 7th. Oops. See, Control Z, fix that. 7th, 8th, so on and so forth. Then you can add other. Or let's say that you really want them to upload a file or to do a linear scale. 1 to 5, how are you feeling today for a check-in for your students? You can do a date. What date do you want to have a parent-teacher conference? You can do drop-downs. So option 1, are you reserving the gym? Are you reserving this? Are you reserving that? Multiple choice, checkboxes, select all that apply to you. So that's what it did for the grade levels. That's why you could have multiple grade levels selected. Or you could do checkbox grids, matching. All of that you can do within. And as you start to type in, you can do that. Now, let's say that I have a test that I already like, that I don't want to change anything to. I just want to be able to use it and not have to change it, but I just don't want to have to grade it because grading it for me takes too long. We're running out of Scantrons. We're on a budget. If you add a question in here, what you can do is you can add an image. You can take a picture of what that test looks like and put that in there. You can go ahead and say, you know what? I know that I cannot drive what a I can't draw what a mitochondria is. So let me just look for Google. Boom. That's what I want to put in there. I insert that. That's now my question. You can put an image in there and say, what is this item above? If you have a sub and you want to watch a YouTube video and you want to make sure that they go through and answer some questions and discussion questions, you can link to a YouTube video as a question. You can make it look pretty by adding section titles, which I do sometimes, but honestly, I'm not one of those like cutesy document type people. Mine is just usually what works. Or depending on what type of files you have. Now, let's say that you have a Word document that you set up as a test. You can import from that Word document, and it'll try to pull those questions and all the answers that are in there. Depending on your textbook company that you might have just adopted this year or what you have previously based on your subject, you can have that go through and you can pull those through, and it'll intuitively do it. But let's be honest, we all know how always work the best, but a lot of them do play the same. So if you have one that's already set up, that's an easy one to pull in. Under settings, so over here, the art brush, you can choose a theme. They have a bunch of preset ones based off whatever you're looking for. So you have like books, all that, it'll change the colors. So I used to be a chemistry teacher, so I find myself using this one a lot with the beakers on the top, the Erlenmeyer flasks, all that, changing the colors. What's nice is if you upload an image, so let's say that you want to upload one, and let's say that I'm going to use the Johnson City Schools logo, it'll match the colors of what's uploaded to whatever file you're using. So if I go to pictures and let's say that I'm going to use Fairmont, our logo, as the top of this because I want to use that, I can redo the sizing, click done, and if you notice, what's going to happen is as I do that, it's going to read through the colors and it's going to start to match some of the colors based off what's in there. You can change the background color over here. You can change the theme color for what the main colors are. You can change the font. You can make a little bit more playful if you want. But where a lot of yours is going to be is in this settings. So a lot of the fun stuff you're going to work with is in settings. So you can do collect email addresses. So as someone fills it out, so let's say you have a parent who wants to request a teacher conference, you can collect their email address. I rarely turn this one on. I would suggest doing a question of the email address rather than this because this is based off how you are logged into your Google browser. So how you're logged into Google Chrome is what gets pulled on that. I have left this one checked so many times and it's come back to bite me in the butt so many times. Restrict to users in Johnson City Schools and its trusted organizations. If I send that out to a parent, they're not going to have access. So if I send that out to a student and they're using their phone and it's not logged on right, they're not going to have access. If you're doing a quiz, you can limit their responses to just once if they're signed into Google. You can change it where they can edit it after they submit. And if you want quick results for students if they take a quiz, you can let them see the summary charts of what's been done as I've gone through. So like, oh man, everyone else got 12 for question 1. I got 13. I don't need to wait for everyone to finish. I can go back and look at that question and just review it. Presentation, you can give people hope by showing them a progress bar if that really makes them feel like they're not getting done quicker on a test or quiz. You can shuffle the question order if you have kids taking this. So that way we can go ahead and go, and then we can show a link to submit another response. And then the last thing that I really want to talk about before I kind of close up at the very end here, I know I flew through this confirmation message, you can really make people feel good about what they see. So when they submit, you can always say something like, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you filling this out. Instead of saying, thank you for your response, they'll see that now. And then you can show them a link to submit another response if you want them to. So let's say you're filling out, getting information on kids. You can do it that way as well. But let me just click through here really quick. On here on your slide, I put certification things. If you're interested in being a level 1 or level 2 Google teacher, Stacy Klein is phenomenal. She added in a lot of things. So I stole those from her. It's an example of some things that you can use on there. I've also done task cards, so you know exactly what you need to do on each thing. And then for whenever you do tips for taking the test, just make sure that you follow through some of these things because I can't tell you how many times I've wasted $10 taking the test because I didn't have 2 computers or I was planning for a 3-hour test and I got a phone call from a parent that needed help. I put stuff on here as well for Google Cloud and Canvas integration because Canvas is the big learning management for ours. There's videos that are on those slides for how to do stuff. And then also at the very end, I think Mr. Payne has already shared this out in the chat. This is how you get your evaluation and your certificate. Guys, I'm on here. I don't mind staying on for a little bit if you have individual questions because I tend to go way too fast. I know that there's a lot of us on this chat. We have 39 currently. So I know that I couldn't be very personal with certain things you're going through. But I have no problem answering questions, any stuff like that. But if this was your goal, you've got your recording, you've got everything you need, you've got the presentation. My contact information, remember, if I go all the way back, is at the very, very start of the slides. It has my email address. It has my Twitter account that I put things out to for different advice, different stuff like that. Feel free to email me, any stuff like that. I'm here to help you guys however I can. I know that I am going through more in depth with docs and slides tomorrow. And then also I have one on the 17th. And then from that point, all the days are the same for me. So I don't know exactly which ones they are. I just know I've definitely got one tomorrow. So Corona has all the days looking the same. But guys, I appreciate it. You're welcome to ask any questions through the chat that I can help out with. The evaluation is on there as well. So I appreciate you guys spending your time with me. I know that on these nice, beautiful summer days that there's a lot of other things that you guys could do. I appreciate you all, and I'm just here to help. So if not, it's great to see you in the little tile that has your name on it or your face as you've gone along. And I hope you got something good out of today that can very much impact your classrooms.
Thank you, Aaron. Thank you so much for attending today's Summer Virtual Institute. And please remember to take the 1-minute survey. This will allow us to reflect on your thoughts about the session because we're always looking for ways to improve. And it also gives us a way to collect information if you would like a certificate of attendance for this session. So it has already been dropped in for you. So please be sure to fill this out before you leave the meeting if you plan on getting a certificate for this particular session. Thank you so much.
Aaron, thank you. That's a lot to cover in a short period of time. My goodness.
Thank you, Aaron.
No problem. I'm just glad it got recorded for you so they can go back and go do it because I go way too fast very much a lot of